Bill Coors, what I didn't realize in watching this documentary, what an incredible life he has had. And we're talking about, he's over 100.
Yeah, he's 102 now.
It's 102.
Yeah.
I mean, you took on a monumental task, which is to tell the story of this man's life. How did that begin?
I'm from England. I don't know the Coors brewery. I knew nothing about it. I'd heard of it, but... So I said, tell me about this man. And when they started telling me about the life that he had lived and that he met Einstein, they had me at he met Einstein. In all honesty, I'm just like, this is amazing. I thought, well, how progressive. His attorney's a woman, his biographer's a woman. You know, this man has clearly led a fascinating life. And they were struggling. What I later came to understand was the first production basically threw the towel in, because it was, like you said, a monumental task of how do you tell this man's story when literally every 5 years of his life could be a documentary and it would be riveting.
He struggled with depression for much of his life.
Yeah.
I mean, some of it due to the fact that he lost his first son his first son was 20 months old and
24
died
months, yeah.
in a tragic choking accident. It was horrifying.
Yeah.
His brother
called Adolf, they called him Ad, kidnapped and murdered, and then that made Bill the oldest son, because Adolf had been the oldest son prior to that, and they didn't know what had happened to him. Bill actually moved in with his brother's wife while they were trying to find out what was happening. They got a kidnapper's ransom note. What they later found out, which was so tragic, was that he'd actually been murdered the same day that he was kidnapped, if you will, because he had stopped to help a man who had broken down in his car, which was deployed to get... Yeah, so that's the kind of guy he was, right? So he pulls over to help this guy whose car's broken down. The guy pulls out a gun. Ad turns to run to get back in his car, and he was shot in the back and killed that day. So they found his remains 7 or 8 months later.
Horrifying.
But the family never talked about all of these traumas in their life. Like their grandfather jumped from a 9-story building and committed suicide, and he was a billionaire, and again in that era, a tycoon. So they never talked about all these tragedies, and they didn't know how. I mean, I would say right in our generation we're learning how to talk about these tragic events, and I think that was part of his journey, was when he was realizing he started to fail in life. He knew there was something wrong with him and he didn't know what it was. And when he went to the Mayo Clinic and they said, well, look, the good news is that you're in excellent health, but there's a million other guys who are presenting with the same things you are. And it didn't have a name, it didn't have depression then. And so Bill thought, right, he did drink for a little while, but that didn't obviously work. And he'd had alcohol problems in the family, didn't want to start that. And so he decided to go on this 25-year journey holistically to find out what was wrong with him and to cure himself.
The film delves into that and so many other aspects. I mean, he was also an innovator technologically speaking. He created the aluminum can, which, we all sort of just take for granted today, right? But that was a new innovation and innovated recycling.
He did. And what was fascinating was that he actually innovated that you bring your can back and we give you a penny back, right? Which back in the day would amass. And what I think I've loved about most of Bill's, his mind is brilliant and he's a real progressive forward thinker, but they're very simple, the things that it's almost like he takes a lot of time to think about these issues and what's going on, and he comes up with the most simplest form to address it. And that's something I've taken away. I try not now to overcomplicate things if I can, and I've had so many life lessons watching, obviously being in the edit bay as long as we were. And I asked him what his legacy, what of everything that he's done, what do you want your legacy to be? And he said, I want kids today, and when he says kids, I'm thinking late 18, early 20s, not to struggle the way that I did, and I see them struggling the way that I did, and if I can leave anything behind, it's to show them what I learned in that 25 years holistically to manage my stress. So he never says he's cured of depression, he doesn't say that, but he says I manage my stress this way. So what's been so amazing as a filmmaker at the festivals that we played is to watch the kids of that age bracket be so affected by the film, and I've seen them streaming with tears and saying, I want all my friends to see this film. So I think we hit the mark.